the MS Michigan Man 64 podcast. My name is Brian Wallace, and I am the MS Michigan Man 64. The MS Michigan Man 64 podcast is about chronic disease awareness. I have had multiple sclerosis for the last 27 years. It's an invisible chronic disease that I've been battling for half of my life. I want to share with you what it is like living with the chronic disease from my experiences and the experiences of other chronic disease warriors. We can fight to have a voice to those that want to listen. Together, we can motivate and educate. Hi, welcome back to the MS Michigan Man 64 podcast. So today I am with another MS warrior that I met a few months back from the state of Michigan, one of my favorite states that I spent a lot of time in. I am talking to Jay today. How you doing today, Jay?
Hey, not too bad, Brian. How about yourself?
I'm doing all right, brother. So, Jay, you got MS, and you were diagnosed about 5 years ago. How did you go about getting diagnosed with MS? Like, what were your symptoms, and what was the path that you took to get your diagnosis?
So, I got diagnosed in 2020, April 11th of 2020. It was my D-Day, I like to call it. Leading up to that, I had a couple of years of symptoms to where I had a portion where my whole right side of my body went numb. And that got better after, going to the hospital and them searching for something, but they never did an MRI on me, because of insurance reasons. And then, I ended up getting better. So I never had, I just thought at that time they said it was a slip disc, So I had optic neuritis going up to that as well, and it messed with my vision. They never thought anything of it, didn't relate it to anything. So we just took steroid eye drops and got better and then went upon our way. And that was in 2016 to 2018. I had those symptoms starting. I ended up going to, I was working a job. I was hauling propane at the time, very physical job. I've been a truck driver for the last 19 years as of now. And I went to work one Friday and both my legs went numb, and I was walking, but very, it was pretty hard to walk. So I ended up going into the hospital, a local hospital to me, and they said, well, we think you may have something wrong with your back. Go see a chiropractor. I went and the next morning, got to the chiropractor, could barely walk at this point. I was numb from my middle of my chest down to my feet. I'm like, man, there's something else going on. And
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so I walk in there, get in, get seen. He takes x-rays, and he's now a friend of mine. Shout out to Collier Chiropractic in Bay City, Michigan. He says to me, gets me adjusted, puts this TENS machine on my back, and he says, Jason, you can't feel that. And I says, nope. And he says, I'm going to do something. I'm going to turn it up. And he turns it up all the way to 10. And he says, you can't feel that? I says, no, sir, I can't. He says, you should be jumping through the roof right now with how bad this is,
Yeah, right.
And
yeah, right.
He pulls the machine off of me and says, I think you have something else going on. He says, I think you have what's called Guillain-Barré syndrome. And I said, okay. And he says, I'm going to call Midland Hospital, which is a hospital which I know hits home for you because it's a U of M hospital. Go Blue.
Go blue.
And
Go blue.
I head out to Midland Hospital. He called them. I walked in the door, and they met me at the door and they said, "Are you Jason?" I said, "Yes, I am." They're like, "All right, come with us." And walked into the MRI machine and they had me in there. I had an answer within a half hour. They pulled me out. I had a telemedicine call because at the time it was the beginning of COVID. It was when they first started shutting everything down for COVID. So I'm by
Yeah. Okay.
myself, and my wife, she's in the car, waiting for the answers. And they pulled me out of the machine, went to the room. They put me on the neurology floor. I had a telemedicine meeting with a neurologist from U of M, and they said, "Hey, you have relapsing remitting multiple sclerosis."
Wow. So now that you got an answer, did that give you like a feeling of relief that okay, finally now we know why I'm feeling like I'm feeling?
It did. It was a huge sigh of relief because I had had symptoms for years leading up to it. I've always been a pretty active guy. I've always attributed it to sports or I overworked my legs,
Yeah.
so on and so forth. And I just finally had an answer to why I felt the way I did most of the time.
Yeah. So did they put you on a DMT right away then?
Well, here's the thing, Brian. At the time, I was 33 years old. I thought I was invincible. I had been a truck driver since I was 19 years old, and I had always worked local stuff, so I was very active. I was in and out of the truck. I was a trash man for, 7, 8 years before that, so very physical jobs.
Mm-hmm.
I had just gotten into the explosives, hauling the explosive stuff, and at that time, for lack of a better term, I thought I was invincible.
Yeah.
Um, Me and my wife were doing very, very well financially. Had everything: boats, cars, motorcycles, so on and so forth. We had the world at our fingertips, and
Yeah.
I at that time I rehabbed by myself, and I had this kind of bigger persona about me where I was like, I can beat MS. I can do it, no problem. Well, so the neurologist, they suggested to me to go on to a DMT.
Yeah.
I denied it because I ran the first 2 years from this disease because I didn't know how bad it could get. Um,
Uh,
so I decided the first 2 years not to do any medicine at all. Well,
how did you do there during those 2 years without a DMT?
I did great. The only thing that I had was the MS hug. I had that for
Mm-hmm.
about on and off consistently every couple days. I would have it for probably the first 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
That brought me to a very, very depressed state because I couldn't. There was nothing that nobody could do to help me, and that's the problem. It was all mental at that time. It was all in
Yeah.
my head, and I had to learn and I guess fight those demons, at that time to try and get better. And
Yeah.
I did. At that time, I sought out, therapy and stuff like that. So it was
Mm-hmm.
pretty hard the first couple of years, mental wise. But
Yeah. So you're still not on a DMT. You're fighting this thing on your own. So what made you make the choice to go on a DMT? I mean, you said you were doing pretty good with
mhm.
it.
So fast forward to October of 2022. I had switched jobs. I got into fuel hauling, so I was hauling a tanker truck, and I was, doing really well. And then October of 2022, I started having trouble with my speech, and my legs went really, really bad. And when I say they went really bad, I got spasticity really bad in my legs. So
Mm-hmm.
I got a hold of a neurologist, my neurologist that I was seeing, and I said, well, I think it's time. And this was after a short hospital stint for, you know, my MS relapse that happened in 2022. I was just struggling with speech. I was talking like I had a stroke. Um, and it
Yeah.
was a very, very hard time for me, you know, mental wise.
Yeah. Yeah.
After a
Sure.
long talk with my wife, I decided, hey, let's try out a DMT, so on and so forth. And I had tried DMTs just a little bit here and there, but I ended up being allergic to two of them that they put me on, um, in 2021. And I was only on them for like 10 days, 2 days on the one, 10 days on the other one.
Yeah.
So I just decided, I'm not going to take them at that time. Um, my neurologist did all the paperwork and they got me on Ocrevus in 2022, and I've been on it ever since. And I've been relapse free up until just recently, a couple days ago. I started having symptoms of being sick over the holidays and stuff. And I don't know if
Yeah.
it's a pseudo relapse or what it is, but my legs have really been bothering me the last couple days. But I am due for my infusion as well.
Okay. So you could be just a little bit weaker leading up to the infusion, possibly.
Yeah, I'm due, I think, in the middle of January here for my infusion. So hopefully that helps out a little bit. You know, everybody always says, well, Ocrevus is a medicine that keeps you stable. But, what I've experienced on it the last 2 years is about 6 weeks before I get my infusion, I start feeling not very good. I start getting my MS symptoms get a little bit worse. And I mentioned that to my neurologist, and she says, yeah, that's something that she's been hearing more and more of.
So when you were going through all this, you're a truck driver, you're making good money, and now you're having all these issues. Did this affect your mental health? Because I mean, there's your head's got to be spinning at this time. So like, explain how you handled that.
So it it affected my mental health very bad because in the United States, for to be a truck driver, you have to have what's called a Department of Transportation medical card. What it is it's medical clearance to be able to drive a semi. I'm a Class A driver, which is a semi. Um,
Hmm.
with having a neurological condition, you have to get checked out more periodic than somebody who doesn't have anything going on with them. Well, I thought I was just fine, and I argued the system for a little bit, and they're like, "No, you have to come every year and get clearance and so on and so forth, and we need a letter from your neurologist stating that you're fit to drive." And I go through the process now with a breeze because I understand it. But
Yeah.
at that point, it was really hard for me to accept. So I did have a lot of time to think. Obviously, as a truck driver, you're in the truck by yourself for 10 to 16 hours a day is what I would drive most times. And
Right.
it was pretty hard mentally. I ended up having a couple bouts where it was a very dark time. And I was contemplating, suicide quite a bit just because I didn't want
Mm,
to live that way anymore.
yeah.
So I ended up reaching out to a counselor, and I got counseling. And I tell you what, it really helped. It really, really helped. I spent hours and
Yeah.
hours on the phone because of, still everybody was still doing the virtual appointments for COVID and so on and so forth. And it was it was
Yeah.
hard to admit at first, but now I would recommend it to anybody. It literally saved my life. Counseling did.
Jay, I can totally relate with you on that. And the same with you. I'm a former University of Michigan football player. I'm 6'5", 295 pounds, and I didn't admit the depression part for such a long time. And I was in the same boat as you. I got to a point where I didn't want to live anymore. I thought it was pointless. I'm a burden on everybody, and it was a dark time in my life too. And thank God my wife, kind of pushed me to get help and reach out. And it's just so important. I can't emphasize it enough. When you get diagnosed with a chronic disease, that it's normal to be depressed. I mean, you're not weak for admitting that you are struggling inside your head, and I can't emphasize enough that to get help.
Yeah, and I can agree with that 100%. I mean, thank God for my wife. Shout out to Molly. She has been my rock. We've been together for 14 years this year. So she was with me pre-diagnosis, and she stayed with me, you know, after diagnosis as well. And needless to say, it was hard at first. When I first got diagnosed, I says to her, I says, you can go. You don't have to live your life like this. You don't have to, um, be here and watch me go through this and support me all the time. And she says, I took those vows when we got married. And she says, I'm staying for better or for worse in sickness and in health. And she has been there. She's been my rock the whole time, and which I'm very thankful for.
That's so
Um,
awesome.
yeah, to have a support system like her has been the best thing that's ever happened to me. And I would not be where I am today without her. Um, you know,
Yeah.
the last couple years, I've transitioned in my career from driving full time. I decided to get into training CDL students. And was just recently promoted to the director of my school that I'm working at here in Michigan. And I, I want to give,
Congratulations, buddy.
yeah, thanks, man. Um, I want to give back to the industry that has given me so much for the past 19 years. I want to give everybody the same opportunities that I've had, as a driver.
Yeah.
So,
The thing that I like about it, though, Jay, is that you went from driving to rely on your income to getting kicked and to getting smacked by MS, and to the point where you were thinking about just calling it quits, and you went from there, and you didn't quit, and you said screw you, MS, and look where you're at because you didn't quit. And I think that's awesome. Just because MS gives you this kind of shot in the stomach doesn't mean that you can't figure shit out to still live a successful and good life.
you know, Brian, I've had so many people tell me that because they say, well, your story is an inspiration. I don't look at it that way. I just look at it as, I mean, I pulled my britches up and I did what I had to do. Um, Trust me, it's been very hard
Yeah.
to do. It has not been easy, but I didn't have another choice. I mean, I like you and I were talking. I could have went on Social Security disability, but I don't want to go through that. 1 to 2 year to 5 year process. I'm still a young man. I'm only
Yeah.
38 years old
Yeah.
right now. So how long could that take?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And Jay, I've been doing this 27 years now with MS, and it is a fight. It's a constant fight, but it's a fight. And I think you just kind of get an attitude after you get diagnosed, and it beats you down so many times, and it kind of pisses you off, and that gives me my determination just to keep on fighting with this disease. And I'm like, screw you, you're not taking me out. I'm going to keep on fighting.
Well, and I can agree with that 100% because I mean I've fought the use of mobility aids, and I have just recently started to embrace using a cane a little bit more. I'm a big guy as well. I'm 6'5", just like you,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a pride thing for me. And I got to get over that. I really do.
Yeah.
Um, I use the handicap parking when I have to. Because there's days that are good, there's days that are bad with my MS, and it's different for everybody. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So how's like the reaction, like from friends, family? I mean, like, are they very supportive with you? They help you out. I mean, do they understand the MS diagnosis? Do they understand the struggles?
so in the beginning, my family was kind of like, I don't know, my dad had primary progressive multiple sclerosis, and he didn't get diagnosed until later on in life. He was in his 50s when he got diagnosed, and he did very well with MS. But honestly, there was symptoms for years and years and years that we had saw. Now we can relate it to, hey, that was probably MS at that time. So they seen my dad fare with it very well. My family did. And then when
Mm-hmm.
I got diagnosed and my relapses, put me in the hospital and so on and so forth. And I started struggling with mobility and, my legs not working correctly. They kind of, I feel, compared. I don't know if this is true or not, but I feel some of my family compared me to my father. So they're almost like, well, his dad did so well. Why isn't he doing well?
Okay.
So the family support in the beginning was, I think it was just they didn't know how to react, in which a lot of people don't know how to react when you get diagnosed with a illness. So
Yeah.
my mom, she's always been there. She's been great. My brothers, they've been pretty good with it too. Now especially we're all getting older. Me and my brothers, and MS is just something that I have now. I'm glad that I got diagnosed with it because it's changed my life for the better. I can tell people about this awesome disease that we have.
Yeah. Right. It's definitely a very humbling disease. I know for me, um, being as young as I was, 26, 27 when I got diagnosed, and you think that you're invincible, like I always thought that I could just run through a brick wall back then, um, and it's a very humbling disease, and it brings you down to reality that, you know what, you're not indestructible. Um, and I think that's kind of a good thing because it made me more aware of everybody around me, and okay, there's people out there that are struggling, have some compassion for them, and it made me more of a compassionate person.
Well, and I can agree with that because I used to look at, people who were ill or sick in a different way than I do now. Now I have, I understand kind of that just because you don't see it doesn't mean that people aren't dealing with something,
Exactly.
you know.
Yep.
And that was
Yeah.
one thing that I try to portray to everybody now, and when I talk about MS and so on and so forth with people, because I do, I try to educate people about it as much as I can because people don't understand,
Oh,
and
yeah.
just because you don't see it doesn't mean it's not there,
Yep. Yep.
so
Absolutely. I mean, I always have people that'll say to me, hey, Brian, you've had MS for so long, but you look great. You look awesome. And I kind of look at them and say, yeah, but looks are deceiving sometimes. I might look okay, but I definitely don't feel it.
yeah. I mean, it's I notice it when I use like my cane or something. I can walk pretty good for quite a ways. I mean, I can go, a half mile if I want, walking, but I have to use my cane when my legs start to get tired and I start to lose balance and so on and so forth. But people look at that and they're like, well, he's walking just fine with his cane. Why does he even need that cane? Why does he need that handicap spot? Well,
Yeah.
go walk around the store with me and then try to walk back to my vehicle when I'm done and see how I'm walking at that point. And that's what people don't see. They see a very small snippet of what you're dealing with at that time and they
Yep.
and they don't care. They make a judgment automatically.
Yep. Absolutely. I agree with you 100%. I mean, if you don't live with the disease, either yourself or you don't have a family member that you actually see going through it, it's very hard to understand what we go through on a daily basis.
And I've always been a big advocate for, well, walk a mile in my shoes type of thing. But I mean, I I don't want people to actually physically walk a mile because 90% of the people that are out there couldn't deal with what us warriors are dealing with day to day. Um,
Hmm.
the neuropathy, the spasticity in your legs, the bladder incontinence, the brain fog. I truly believe that we have this disease because we can fight it, and we do it every day. Um, that's the attitude that I've set forth since I've been diagnosed. Is I'm going to fight and I'm never going to quit. And I think that everybody that has MS, and I understand people go through very, very hard times, but you can't give up. You can't because it's too
No.
easy to give up. It really is.
Yep. Yep. To me, it doesn't matter. Like, early in my disease, you couldn't really even tell that I had it. And, now I'm to the point where I have to use a cane, I have to use a walker, I even have to use a wheelchair. And that part has always been kind of like an adjustment, trying to get, adjusted to what other people are thinking about me. But my attitude is it doesn't matter. I'll be crawling. I will never let MS beat me.
No,
Never.
no, I won't either. I'm too much of a hard-headed individual to stop now because I mean I've fought for going on 5 years now, and why stop fighting now? Why give up? You know, you always have
Yeah.
to get up and keep going. I mean, it's like I said, it's way too easy to give up. And is it hard? Absolutely. You battle every single day with this disease, but the easiest thing to do is give up. The hardest thing is to get up and fight.
Yep. Yeah. And to realize, I think the earlier you realize, the better, that MS is not a death sentence. Just because you hear the words multiple sclerosis, you got multiple sclerosis, you cannot react to it like, okay, I'm screwed. You got to react to it like, okay, I got MS. Now I'm going to attack this disease as hard as I can, and I'm not going to let it beat me.
Right. And I mean, you will have periods of time where, I've noticed in the last couple of years where it was like, okay, I'm going to settle down for a second. I'm not going to push as hard, because pushing, the mobility stuff and walking farther and, doing the yard work and all that stuff has really made me fatigued, especially at times in the last couple of years. But I still
Mm-hmm.
like to focus on the things that I still can do. You know,
Yeah, absolutely.
I like to
Yep.
focus on, okay, I can get out there today. This summer, I planted 21 trees in my yard, arborvitaes and maple trees and so on and so forth. And I didn't do it all at once. I did it over the course of, 3 months, but I did it. That's
Sure.
what the biggest thing is you have to have that sense of pride and accomplishment that, hey, I still can do this kind of stuff. It just takes time.
Yeah. 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 I mean, something that I remember when I was able to still cut the grass, something that when I was healthy that used to take me 20 minutes to cut my grass. Um, but when it started struggling, it would take me, sometimes an hour just because I would have to take a break. But my point is that I didn't stop cutting the grass. I still wanted to do it. I enjoyed doing it. I just had to do it in a different way that was good for me.
I have a friend of mine. His name is Justin, and he's in the medical industry, and he's in the heart surgeries and all that stuff. And he he says to me a couple times in the last year, he says, I really, I like how you push so much. He says, you don't give up. He says, your resilience is amazing. And, I really take pride in that, because, he sees a lot of people that are worse off than have been, and, he says, I just take pride in that, being able to still do those things. And I'm not out there to wow anybody. It's just the self satisfaction of being able to still do
Sure.
things.
And just you can't give up. You just you got to keep on fighting, even if it's just the smallest little victories. You got to celebrate the small victories.
There's something that my dad always used to say. He would always say, all right, let's take five, take 5 minutes, and I'll say to myself when I start getting worked up now, and I'm working on something and it's frustrating me, and because my hands aren't working right or my legs aren't working right, I can't stand long enough. I'll just say to myself internally, I'll be like, all right, take five, Jay. And I'll walk away from it. I'll come back and I'll accomplish whatever I'm working on, but it just takes a little bit longer nowadays.
Yeah, yeah, I love it, man. I love it. So Jay, I'm going to give you one more shot at just if you want to say one more thing to anybody out there that's going through the process of getting diagnosed, or they just newly got diagnosed. What would your message be for them with getting diagnosed with multiple sclerosis?
There's a couple things. Number one, I'm going to tell you, don't give up. Today's not the end. It's just the beginning. Um, you will still be you. You will not be anybody else, because you were you before diagnosis. You will be you after diagnosis. When you need help, reach out and ask for help. That is the biggest thing I think I struggled with in the beginning, because I've never asked for help on anything. Now I'm not ashamed to ask for help. And just remember, it will go by fast, and live life to your fullest, because you will not be able to search for answers and get answers immediately with this disease. You will always be learning and searching. So don't forget to live your life. That's the biggest thing I think that I struggled with in the beginning, is just slowing down and taking it all in.
Wow, yeah. Man, that's awesome words, man. I can't emphasize enough how dead on you are on that, Jay. I appreciate you so much coming on here. I know we met last summer, and um, I'm so glad that we had the opportunity to actually physically meet in person and met your wife. You are just an awesome person to talk to. I can't emphasize enough how happy me and Sharon were to meet you and Molly. And I know we'll be friends for a long time, buddy.
Oh, absolutely, man. I look forward to it.
All right, Jay. So I just want to remind everybody to hit the follow, subscribe button on the episode, and follow me on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple. And this is the MS Michigan Man. I am out until my next episode. You all have a great day.